Want a demo of how you can use your stash yarns? Keep watching and you'll see how I use mine. Start with a basket of your scraps, and I've already started winding some of them, as you can see, with the ball, and you can see the different colors that are already on there. You wind your yarn until you get to the end, and then this one has a little loose twist in it at the end, so I'm going to cut that off. Take your next ball, put the two tails together, tie an overhand knot, test it to make sure it's nice and tight because you don't want it to come out when you're knitting, and then cut about a ½ inch tail on there, and then start winding. And you can see that this ball is really big, so I might divide this in parts. A lot of times my favorite thing to do is divide it into thirds. Use about a third, then use a third somewhere else, and then a third again. So I'll wind until either I run out or I'm tired of that color. And I'm going to kind of stay with the greens and browns. Again, tie an overhand knot. Make it very tight. And cut. And then wind. I'm at the end of this color, and my ball is pretty big, or my cake, so I'm going to take it off, and you can see all the really pretty colors, and then I'm going to set that one aside and start another one. So I will probably stay with the greens. So once again, I'm going to start winding. And this is the second time I've used this one, so I'm going to save a little bit for somewhere else. So I'll be cutting that and adding another color in. So once again, a tail, overhand knot, cut it to a half. And the reason I'm cutting these is because I don't want to have to weave in any ends, and that little short half will tuck into my project when I'm done. You can see I have 7 cakes here, all wound with different colors. The more colors you use, the less you have to be concerned about colors going together. Something about 1,000 colors and they all go together. 2 or 3 colors and then you have to be more concerned. You can do shorter spots of yarn if you want. You can make long striping. The door is open to you for what you can do to color coordinate this. I just like using random colors and lots of them. So I've got 7 strands here that are coming from the 7 balls. I'm going to start with by tying a knot just to keep them together and working a little chain to get me started, just by pulling, getting some feed coming into my hands. Then I'm going to make a slip knot. And we call it a slip knot because it pulls out. So if you crochet, you're very familiar with this technique. So I'm going to make a slip knot, put my fingers in, grab the next group, and I'm going to hold the knot and pull a long loop out. Then I'm going to reach over here and pull another long loop. And you can see what's happening, and if you weren't trying to film this, you can get to a place where it's when I'm just doing it in my lap, it's not that awkward. But trying to get it so you can see what I'm doing. And so the chains, you can see how I'm just chaining and chaining. So what I'm going to do now is stop, and I'm going to move my basket out of the camera range so that it will feed in easier and I have more room to show you what I'm doing. So I like my basket on the floor because then it feeds the yarns in more even. Now you see a little knot there where we tied it. It's just, we're not going to pay any attention to it. We're just going to move on. kind of magical. Put your hand through, grab and pull. So now you can see that I'm getting quite a little pile of yarn beside me. So I'm going to lay my chain down carefully, come over to where I started, and now I'm going to make a new ball of yarn. And then keep chaining. Now, I'm not at the end of all of my cakes, but if I run out of one of my cakes, I'll just tie on a new cake and just keep going until I get as much yarn as I want for my project. But for demonstration purposes, I'm going to pretend that I am done and I want to end and I have all the yarn I need. So I'm going to cut my yarn, and this last chain right here, I'm just going to bring these ends over, kind of loop them. I got one little tail that's hiding there. And then just kind of tie a big knot at that end. And then that becomes my tail I have to work in. Alright, so I got some other samples of this. This is a little sock yarn one we were doing with all fingering weight yarns. And this is just my little ball. I will go back and use up the rest of my cakes, and I like the fingering weight yarn for bath mats. When I do this up like this, then I start knitting with this on my knitting needles, and I have a nice cushiony, soft bath mat. And because it's superwash wool, all the fingering yarns I use are superwash wool, then it washes well and it wears well and it lasts forever, and it wicks the water into the rug and not all over the floor. The reason I chain my yarns to knit with them versus just holding 7 strands is, first of all, when I do this, now I have 21 strands, because 3 times 7 is 21. You can use 5 strands, you can use 6 strands, it's up to you. But I chain them because if you've ever held a whole bunch of strands together and knitted with them, what happens is you get different rates of stretch. This kind of solves some of that problem, as you can see in this piece that I'm working on now. And these are some of the tails. I left these tails longer. I can weave them in, tuck them in, or cut them. But you can see I've been playing with different stitch patterns, slip stitches, and how it knits up is really fun. This yarn had some fuzz in them. I've got other samples of yarns. This is one that has less strands, but multiple yarns that were just left over in my stash. Here's some ones with some fun colors from when novelty yarns were so popular, and we all used the fashion yarns or novelty yarns that had lots of texture and ribbons, and so they knit up really fun. And here's another one. This one's the same. It's all, you can see it goes into all different colors. So you get this really fun, playful way to use your stash.